Hey guys, happy Friday. I know it has been a while since I made a video, but for those of you who haven't been watching my channel, I just had a baby. He will be 1 month old tomorrow, and he was sleeping when I was gonna start this video, but now he's wide awake. So this may or may not go very well recording this video, and I'll insert a few pictures and a little clip of him in his swing. He is a swing baby. That's where he loves to lay, and the first few nights that we brought him home, he actually wanted to sleep in his swing. So I slept on the couch and my husband slept on the floor by the swing to make sure he was okay, because we know they're not really supposed to sleep in their swing. Sorry, I got distracted by my camera. Anyways, so I wanted to talk about my labor story and give kind of an update for that, and I might make more videos about this if you're interested, because this might be just an overall very broad discussion of what all I went through. If you want more details on certain things, please ask it in the comments, and like I said, I might make more videos. So I had a really healthy pregnancy. I have a few other pregnancy updates, like when I was originally announced it, and then the gender. I think I did one other update, but I had a pretty healthy pregnancy. I really had no issues during my pregnancy. The last trimester, the main thing towards the very end was my hip pain. I had horrible hip pain when I walked too much, and like it would make me get a limp. I don't know exactly what it was. Now looking back, we kind of know, which I'll get more into later, but that was the main thing that I had. My son's name is Milo James, and he measured quite large most of the pregnancy. Like, he measured 2 weeks larger, so they were really worried the whole pregnancy that he was going to be a pretty big baby. So I went to my 38-week checkup with my doctor, and she said I look great, Milo looked great, everything was peachy, and then she pretty much said, hey, something along the lines of, would you like to be induced a week from today? And I did not know much about induction, and I was asking some questions, and she pretty much said, you know, next week he'll be 39 weeks. He's technically full term. All he's going to do if he stays in there is just gain weight, and he's already measuring kind of big. Induction might want to be something we consider. And I like my doctor, and I'm not going to switch. I'm not upset at her, but the way she was presenting it was kind of like she highly recommended induction, and that was kind of like just the way things were going to go, was that he was going to be induced on July 18th. So I told my family and everything, and they actually went ahead and took off. And then I had another checkup the day before the induction, and when I went there, she kind of was like, so are we still going to induce? And I was kind of like, I thought that was like the only option, was that we were going to induce. And she's like, oh no, you could technically wait if you wanted to. And then once again she said, he's only going to grow bigger, but if you want to wait, no big deal. And so that made me feel kind of uneasy, because I was like, I thought induction was a have to thing at this point, and then she made it seem like if I wanted to wait, I could. So we went ahead and scheduled the induction for the following day, but she told us we could cancel it if we wanted to. So me and my husband that night like debated this induction thing. I think my appointment was at 3:30, and we did not fully decide to go through with it till like 10 or 11 o'clock that night. And it was just, I don't know, I kind of felt something in my gut that maybe this wasn't the perfect timing for it. And that I should try to wait and do it more natural, but at the same time I was worried because he had been measuring big. I had done some research, and I knew that according to Google, they have high success rates right now, inducing you at 39 weeks of you still being able to deliver naturally. So at the end of the day, I was like, you know, maybe this is a God thing, and we should just go ahead and do it. And so we decided to go ahead and be induced. So that morning I had to be at the hospital, I think at 7, and we went in to get induced. One thing nice about being induced, it was so nice going through the check-in process and answering all those cajillion questions and getting hooked up to everything when I wasn't in pain. I can't imagine what it's like if you're 4 or 5 centimeters dilated and having to do all that while dealing with the pain. So we get in our room, and everything was fine. I was actually having a few contractions when we got there. It was nothing painful, but enough to start showing on the machine. And I got there, and they hooked me up, and they started Pitocin. The hospital was really good. The nurses were spectacular. And so I think it was about 2 to 4 hours after I was induced. I was only dilated 1 to 1.5, and the doctor came in, and she ended up saying, while she was checking my cervix, would you like me to break your water? And I wish she would have explained it more, that she was going to do that before she was checking my cervix, because it kind of put me on the spot, and I was like, sure. So she goes ahead and she breaks my water. Not long after that, the contractions really started, and I went from like no contractions to contractions every 2 or 3 minutes. And at first I was able to tough them out. Side note, we kind of wanted to try with no epidural. I ended up needing an epidural because those contractions even at times went to just being a minute apart. I was beginning to get in a lot of pain. I could not walk around too much because I was hooked up to machines. They did have ones where you could walk around, but for some reason they were not working that day. And I had tried setting up, I had tried kind of leaning on my husband, and finally we were like, I need the epidural. And one thing kind of funny, so just to show how quickly my contractions got super painful, I was setting up on my husband. I was finally looking at the nurse. I was like, hey, I would kind of like to talk about an epidural. And she's like, okay, I'll go get the doctor and you can ask a couple questions and everything. And maybe 10 minutes later, the doctor came in and she was like, okay, I'm here to answer your questions. I was like, I have none. I want the epidural. I didn't ask any questions. And I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes. I wonder if you guys can hear him on the camera. But 15 or 20 minutes later, I got the epidural. And it wasn't too painful of a process. It did kind of feel like a bee sting, like she said it would. And it was very weird kind of feeling something cold going up and down my spine. It wasn't like freezing cold, but it was chilly. And that epidural really helped. I started dilating really good, which they said the epidural might help me relax. So that I got the epidural late afternoon. Still at night, I don't think I was to 9 centimeters yet. So they told us to try to get a little sleep. In between this time, sorry if the story is kind of like really scattered, I had started to run a fever, so they had to give me Tylenol, so that was a little scary. But the scariest moment was so I had an epidural, so I could not turn over by myself because I was numb. I had a little bit of feeling, but I couldn't do it by myself. So the nurses were rotating me every hour or so. So I was laying facing against the window, so I was not seeing the door, and my husband had gone out of the room to get some coffee. And while he was gone, I heard someone come in the room, and I just assumed it was my husband. And 2 nurses came in, and they were walking very, very fastly, and they said his heart rate has dropped. So next thing I know, they are flipping me over, and I understand that they were probably trying to get his heart rate back up really quickly, but they weren't telling me anything. So it's kind of scary. They come in, they flip me over, and they're like, his heart rate, his heart rate. One is looking at the computer, and one is starting to rub my stomach and being like, come on, come back up. And they end up getting 3 other nurses in there and a doctor. They had to give me a shot in the leg because they thought the contraction was maybe squeezing him too hard. And then they also had to put oxygen on me, and like all this happened in like a matter of minutes. And like I said, they weren't necessarily telling me what was going on. They were just trying to get his heart rate up. The doctor is standing at the door trying to make sure everything is under control, and my husband comes back in and he's like, what in the world is happening? And that was so scary. It was terrifying. I remember I was like, I hope I don't lose my baby. And I could not open my eyes after that. I kept my eyes closed. They stayed in there, and they got his heart rate up, and they finally left, and my husband was just holding my hand, and I could not open my eyes because I knew if I opened my eyes and saw him, I would cry, and that would raise my blood pressure, and I did not want to risk the baby's heart rate going up. So I think I laid there probably 10 minutes kind of crying with my eyes closed, and my husband just held my hand, and he was terrified too because he had just stepped out to go get coffee, and when he came back there's all kinds of nurses around his wife. So I have to say that was the absolute scariest thing of it, and possibly the scariest thing in my life. And we still get emotional when we talk about it. But his heart rate went back up, thankfully. It never dropped again. So that night they told us to try to rest. They came in during the night and kept rotating me over and over, trying to get me to dilate. I was dilating, and I eventually got to like 9.5 centimeters. I don't think there was really much that happened during the night. I did end up having to ask for a little bit more epidural because it started to wear off a little bit, so they gave me a button to push, and I think she had to increase my amount one time. So the following morning about 4, I had got to 9.5, and they're like, okay, we might really be getting there. So they start turning me over more and more, and I guess it was the next day that the heart rate dropped. Sorry, like I said, it's kind of a blur. So it's now the following day, his heart rate dropped. They were coming to check my cervix, and finally my cervix was kind of starting to swell, and they said they wanted to get the doctor. It still wasn't opening all the way, and at this point me and my husband are so tired. I had now been in labor over 24 hours, and we were really like, I think a C-section might be in the future. And the doctor finally came and decided, due to my cervix starting to swell a little bit, let's go ahead and do a C-section. They got me in the operating room within 15 minutes after that. And so I get in the operating room, and they have to give me so much medicine, it is insane. They gave me like 3 antibiotics, they gave me some more numbing stuff, and I think they gave me some nausea medicine. Whatever they gave me caused me to shake so bad. I was like, I don't think my lower half was shaking, but I couldn't really feel it, and I doubt it was because then they really couldn't operate on me. But my arms were legit shaking. You have to put your arms out on a table like this, and I was shaking so bad I almost looked like I was convulsing. Also, I got so nauseous, and I even got nauseous during labor. I threw up twice, so I just felt like I was just gonna throw up on the table, and I'm laying back, and the worst feeling is when you're laying back and feel like you're gonna throw up, and I had to just turn my head to the side if I was gonna throw up. The nurses were still super nice. They're trying to help me. I think they gave me like 3 different nausea medicines, and it did not help. There was no pain with my C-section, but there was so much pressure that it was uncomfortable to the point of causing pain, if that makes sense. Not like severe pain, but just I really want this over pain. And so they got him out relatively quick, and they took him over to the table, and my husband got to see him. I got to hear him cry, but I did not get to see him at first. I was very, very sick. I thought I was gonna throw up. I was actually kind of hoping I would throw up just so I would feel better. So I was so sick. I was shaking horribly on the table. My husband said it was not fun at all. He was so happy to see his son being born, but his wife over here is like convulsing and about to throw up and cut open. And so I'm kind of glad now, but I still get emotional about it. My husband didn't show me Milo because he knew it would make me cry and stuff, and he knew I was already shaking and so sick. So I did not see Milo in the operating room. It felt like eternity for them to get me to close up, and it was even more pressure and pushing on my stomach, and it just was not a very fun experience at all. We had been in labor a total of like 27 hours, and so I was completely exhausted. They get me to the recovery room, and I don't remember too much, but I was crying a lot. I think some of that might have been the medicine coming off, but I was very emotional and crying, and my husband was crying too because he didn't like to see his wife in pain. I apparently breastfed Milo. I don't remember that too much, and I didn't hold him too long. I was very nervous to hold him because I was so shaky, and it was just a very weird experience. Nothing like what I prepared for, because I thought when you have a baby you're going to be so excited and just want to hold and love on the baby, even with a C-section. But this, I was in pain and just not very happy, and I think my eyes were heavy too, and I was trying to sleep. But I breastfed him. We finally got to a room and we let our family see him. So Milo was born at 1:10 in the afternoon. Probably around 6ish I was finally starting to get some of that medicine worn off. I ate that night, and I was very nervous to eat because I was terrified I was going to throw up again. That night I got up with the nurse's assistance and was able to walk to the bathroom because some of it was wearing off. We stayed in the hospital, so we were induced Tuesday morning at 7, did not have Milo till Wednesday at 1 p.m. and then we didn't get to go home till Saturday. While I was in the hospital, my husband, my parents had to help me get up because it was very hard after a C-section getting up on your own, and also with the scar and my just everything being moved around in there. Every time I got up I had to stand for a minute. It was not a very fun experience at all. I was able to breastfeed in the hospital. We thought we were originally going to keep Milo in our room because we have a nursery, but they don't have to go in there. But just to get some sleep and some rest, we sent him in the nursery at night, and they brought him back every 4 hours for me to try to feed him. One thing we found out too was somehow Milo, when he was in the birth canal, his head was kind of crooked, and that's possibly why my cervix was swelling and why he wasn't coming out as easy. That might have also been now why my hip was hurting, is maybe he was kind of wedged down in there. that also could have been from her breaking my water and he just came down too fast. We really don't know. So for Milo, because he had a different type of he had the type of monitor that they put inside you and like put on his head, he had some bleeding on his head and a scab from that. But also because either that or because his heart rate dropped, they had to check his sugar for like 36 hours or something, and they had to prick his foot, and I felt so bad for him. His sugars were a little low at times, but they finally regulated themselves out. On Friday, we were still pretty emotional about the whole experience because nothing went like what we thought it would. We found out he has a heart murmur, which was a little scary, and I think just everything that I had been through, I just like had a breakdown in the hospital because I didn't like knowing not only had my pregnancy and birth gone like what I thought it would, now my son has problems. We then found out due to an ultrasound he had a dilated artery in his heart, which we had never heard of, and that made me break down all over again because no one could really give us much information about it, and I was trying not to Google it. And so he actually has an appointment tomorrow with a children's hospital doctor about his heart. So I'll give an update on that when we know more. But he seems really healthy, and one thing me and my husband had to tell is we just have to trust the Lord with this, and the hospital would not have sent him home if they thought his heart was too dangerous. He's already had his 1-week-old checkup, and the doctor said she's pretty sure the murmur is closing on its own because she could barely hear it. So we are very prayerful and hoping that he is okay with his appointment tomorrow. So we did get to go home on Saturday. It was kind of rough when I got home. The car ride was interesting because if you live in Indiana, potholes are no joke, and potholes when you had a C-section is, if you go over them slowly, tolerable. Getting home was kind of rough because I couldn't take a shower by myself. I couldn't carry Milo and walk, so I was pretty much just laying around and feeding him. Gradually I got better. By a week I was doing better, and then now I'm doing like really good. I'm able to carry him. I still can't exercise or do anything too strenuous for 2 more weeks. I'm 4 weeks out. Pregnancy brain is making me remember all kinds of things. I think that's everything. So just to kind of wrap up, would we induce again? No, not unless it's needed. We're not upset that we induced, and that's something we go back and forth. Like, would we have had such a horrible experience if we hadn't have induced? We don't know. Would Milo have had more problems if we hadn't have induced? We don't know. We wonder if we had waited, if his head was having problems, if that could have caused issues, or if its heart rate would have dropped at home when we weren't hooked up to a monitor. That could have been a nightmare. So he's kind of getting hungry, so I need to wrap this up. So would we induce? Probably not unless necessary. We are okay that we induced. So I understand different people have different opinions about induction. So please be nice in the comments. I am breastfeeding him. He has been breastfed for a month now. This past few days I have started to pump some because he was hurting me some with his latch, and I kind of personally like pumping and bottle feeding. I still want to try to breastfeed him a little bit though. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't leave anything out, and if you have any questions, please leave them below. We are so thankful for our little healthy baby, and I can make a breastfeeding video if you guys want to of my personal journey with that, because it wasn't all easy during it. That was my birth story, and I hope this video didn't scare anybody. I'm not making it to scare anyone. Some people have perfectly fine inductions. My induction, if he would have just let me dilate that other like ½ centimeter, we could have had a completely different outcome, but that just wasn't in the Lord's will for us. So please don't let this video scare you. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to tell you my story. And if you've had something similar, you know, please comment below. I'm finding out that a couple people I've talked to have had something very similar happen to them, and it's just nice to be able to talk about it with other women who have done the same thing. So thank you guys, and I hope you guys have a happy Friday. Bye.